Now to a developing story. The outback search for 4-year-old Gus Lamont in South Australia will resume tomorrow, with police to focus their efforts on 6 mine shafts that have recently been discovered near his home. The little boy vanished, seemingly without a trace, from his family's property near Yunta nearly 2 months ago. The new search is expected to last up to 3 days. Last month, police drained a large dam to eliminate the possibility that Gus may have drowned.
In every major investigation, there are moments that change everything. Moments where a single decision, a single delay, or a single overlooked detail can reshape the entire search for the truth. And in the disappearance of young Gus Lamont, one decision continues to spark questions across Australia and beyond. Why did it take so long for authorities to search the old mine shafts scattered across the outback terrain? These shafts existed for decades, steep, dark, and dangerous reminders of the region's mining past, and yet they were not investigated until weeks into the search. Today, we're digging deeper into the timeline, the decision-making, and the complex chain of events that led to one of the most debated investigative delays in recent memory. This isn't about assigning blame, it's about understanding the real reasons behind the choices made, the logistical challenges hidden beneath the surface, and the lessons investigators say must never be forgotten. Because in remote regions like Oak Park Station, nothing is simple. Terrain can mislead, maps can be outdated, and critical information can take time to surface. But when a child is missing, every minute carries weight. And every unanswered question feels like a door left open. So today, we break down the sequence of events, the operational hurdles, the expert insights, and the public concerns. What really caused the delay? What was happening behind the scenes? And how did these decisions shape the direction of the search? Before we dive into this story, remember, this is Detective Kate, True Crime, a channel that stands for justice and giving every case the attention it deserves. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss any of our investigations. And don't forget, share your thoughts and theories below. Every clue counts. In the initial days of the search for Gus Lamont, teams concentrated their efforts on the homestead radius, carefully dividing the property into grid sections and methodically checking water sources and surrounding scrub. On paper, the approach appeared organized, but significant areas were left unexamined. Notably, the old mine shafts scattered across the property remained untouched. The rugged terrain made early detection difficult, and investigators were hindered by incomplete property mapping and a lack of updated coordinates for several shafts. While volunteers and specialized personnel worked tirelessly, the contrast was clear. Areas near the homestead were thoroughly searched, yet potentially critical zones, including the old shafts, remained hidden in plain sight. This early oversight created a tension that would define the investigation, a gap between what had been searched and what was still unexplored, leaving unanswered questions about how quickly Gus Lamont could be located in the expansive and challenging outback terrain. And while all this was happening, the mine shafts remained unchecked. Days turned into weeks, and pressure began to build. The public saw unused ground. Investigators saw a list of high-risk features requiring resources they couldn't yet deploy. Between those two perspectives was a growing disconnect and a growing sense that something essential was being delayed. As the initial search teams continued working through the homestead radius, covering grid sections, water sources, fence lines, and surrounding scrub, another challenge was forming behind the scenes, one rooted not in the rugged terrain, but in the system itself. The moment investigators acknowledged the presence of old shafts on the property, it triggered a long chain of internal procedures. Searching old mine shafts isn't something a standard ground crew can do. It requires specialist availability, rope technicians, confined space teams, hazard assessors, and STAR-qualified officers trained for vertical descent. Before any of that can happen, agencies must sort out jurisdiction. Old mining sites in outback regions often fall under different regulatory bodies, and confirming who has authority to green-light a shaft entry can take time. Added to that were issues of resource allocation, deciding which teams could be deployed immediately, which needed equipment transported, and which required risk briefings before stepping onto unstable ground. All of this unfolded while crews were still struggling with incomplete property mapping and outdated or partially updated coordinates for several of the shafts. What the public saw as a simple decision, search the shaft, it was in reality slowed by bureaucratic delay, Equipment had to be sourced, approvals signed, and hazard assessments completed. Even moving heavy gear across such rugged terrain required planning and logistical sign-off. These steps are designed to protect the teams entering dangerous areas, but they also create unavoidable pauses in momentum. Meanwhile, the old shafts remained untouched, a stark contrast to the intensely searched grid sections near the homestead. And as days passed, pressure mounted. The disconnect grew between what investigators needed in order to proceed safely and what the public expected to see happen immediately. As authorities grappled with bureaucratic delay, local voices began to raise alarm over the search for Gus Lamont. Residents and volunteers questioned why the old mine shafts remained untouched while teams methodically combed the homestead radius, grid sections, and water sources. Many noted that the rugged terrain, incomplete property mapping, and outdated coordinates meant that several shafts were effectively invisible to initial search teams. Experts and locals emphasized that critical areas could be missed, pointing out that the pace of the search was affected by specialist availability, resource allocation, and jurisdiction decisions. Their concerns highlighted a growing tension between official procedure and public expectation, raising urgent questions about whether crucial leads for Gus Lamont were overlooked in the early days of the investigation. As the investigation into Gus Lamont's disappearance progressed, authorities discovered that several old mine shafts had been missing from the initial property maps. Incomplete property mapping and outdated coordinates meant that some shafts, located 5 to 12 kilometers from the homestead, had been entirely overlooked. The rugged terrain made detection even harder, and early search teams focused primarily on the homestead radius, grid sections, and water sources. This revelation raised serious questions about the effectiveness of the early search. Experts noted that without updated coordinates and proper mapping, even the most methodical searches could miss critical areas. The delay in examining these hidden shafts, combined with bureaucratic delays and limitations in specialist availability, highlighted the challenges faced by investigators and underscored the need for adaptive strategies in remote high-risk terrain when searching for Gus Lamont. After days of initial searches focusing on the homestead radius, grid sections, and water sources, authorities finally shifted attention to the old mine shafts where Gus Lamont might have been. The discovery of uncharted shafts, combined with incomplete property mapping and outdated coordinates, prompted a reassessment of priorities. Specialist teams, including rope technicians and STAR qualified officers, were mobilized despite earlier bureaucratic delays and challenges in resource allocation. Jurisdiction decisions were clarified and hazard assessments completed, allowing teams to safely enter the rugged terrain. This decisive action marked a turning point in the investigation, a critical acknowledgement that early oversight of old shafts had left potentially vital areas unchecked in the search for Gus Lamont. Once the decision was made to focus on the old mine shafts, search teams moved cautiously into the rugged terrain. Specialist availability was critical. Rope technicians, hazard assessors, and STAR-qualified officers were deployed to navigate the unstable shafts safely. Updated coordinates and improved property mapping guided each step, ensuring the search was as thorough as possible. The operation highlighted the extreme challenges investigators faced while looking for Gus Lamont. Grid sections and previously searched water sources were revisited for context, but the shafts required meticulous attention. Every descent into the dark, narrow openings demanded careful planning and coordination, underscoring how critical specialist expertise and resource allocation are when searching complex and hazardous areas. This phase of the search revealed both the determination of the teams and the consequences of early oversights, emphasizing the importance of thorough planning and complete property mapping in missing person investigations. As the search for Gus Lamont continues, questions remain about the early decisions and the delays in examining old mine shafts. The rugged terrain, incomplete property mapping, and outdated coordinates contributed to critical areas being overlooked during the first phase of the investigation. Early focus on the homestead radius, grid sections, and water sources was thorough but left hidden shafts unsearched. Authorities have emphasized that bureaucratic delay, specialist availability, and jurisdiction considerations were necessary to ensure the safety of the teams, but the public scrutiny remains intense. Experts now stress the need for improved property mapping and faster deployment of specialized resources in future searches. While the operation is ongoing, every step in the rugged terrain is informed by lessons learned from the initial oversight. The search for Gus Lamont continues, guided by updated coordinates, careful resource allocation, and meticulous examination of the old shafts, ensuring that no area is left unchecked as investigators strive to bring closure to this complex and challenging case.